And before I begin the talk, I would like to begin with a word, congratulations. Okay. Congratulations for the stream of good news that has continued to be sent to Taiwan and the rest of the world from the Philippines. For example, the graduation at Guangming College in the new Tagaytay campus. That was definitely an amazing good news. And also congratulations for your continued Dharma endeavors. Despite the physical separation because of COVID, I think we have actually become closer by spending more time on Zoom. I don't feel that there's any one of us here who is not familiar with Zoom up till now because of the frequency of us joining via this platform. And also congratulations for everything you have done. All the efforts in Philippines by Fogwangshan would not have been possible without you. So for that reason, I refer to all of you as Bodhisattva. We call each other Bodhisattvas. The senior Bodhisattvas, junior Bodhisattvas, aspiring Bodhisattvas, and diligent Bodhisattvas. Many of us are referred to with the title of a Bodhisattva. So I wonder how you feel when we call you a Bodhisattva. Does it frighten you? Does it make you anxious? Yeah. Does it make you stressful? Right? Or does it make you smile? I hope it's something closer to the last answer, because to my memory, when I was in Australia, we get referred to as 小菩萨, right? Little Bodhisattvas and 老菩萨 a lot. And during my first few years at Fogwangshan, as we were about to get used to this title, there came this 76-year-old grandmother from Taiwan. She was quite new at Fogwangshan, but a very diligent practitioner. And so when she came on one of the Sundays to our Sydney temple, the Venerable greeted her by saying, 早安, 老菩萨. Good morning, our senior Bodhisattva. And that greeting freaked her out like nothing else. She felt so scared that in return, her answer to the Venerable's greeting, basically translated into English, is something as follows. Me, a Bodhisattva? I'll be damned. Please don't call me a Bodhisattva. It's too much for me. So that was actually quite funny for me to see. Although I too had trouble accepting why we're being referred to as a Bodhisattva, I don't think my response is as violent as hers. Okay. But we've become so accustomed to calling each other that, I think it's become quite an affectionate reference. Okay. So I do that to all of you, not just for the merit you have accumulated, okay, but also for the virtue that you have continued to develop and actually benefit others with. So for that, anything that you have done to be deserved to call a Bodhisattva is truly what you deserve. So what is a Bodhisattva's virtue, you might wonder? Okay. Well, it's simple. Just refer to what you have been doing at Fogwangshan, what you have been doing at home, what you have been doing as a changed practicing Buddhist. All of these can show the virtue in you, either in the form of loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, or even equanimity. Right? These are the 4 heavenly homes for the mind of a Bodhisattva, right? The 4 Brahma Viharas, or the 4 immeasurables in a Bodhisattva, which we chant and practice every day. So in fact, all of these virtues have already been a part of you, right, in your endeavor to become a better person or to be a good practicing Buddhist. Okay. So to sum up kindness, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, right, we can pretty much more or less refer to these virtues into 2 words, Pranaya wisdom. Right. By Pranaya wisdom, it refers to your worldly knowledge to maintain a business, to keep your family together, right, to keep your life running, and to even spare any extra effort to help other people. But other than worldly knowledge, there's also the world transcending wisdom you have begun to show more and more in each day of your life as a practicing Buddhist. So you ought to give yourself a pat on the back for that. For that, you deserve to be called a Bodhisattva with worldly and world-transcending Buddhism, right? Knowledge. Okay. And so when we talk about Bodhisattva, they become the role models of virtue and merit, right? As many of you are my role models too, right? Our chief abbess, our abbess, and all the venerables who are hardworking, they're all my role models. Okay. But do you have a role model yourself? 你的偶像是谁? And why do you regard this person, him or her, as your role model? Right? Just in the videos we have seen, many of your sons and daughters actually regard you as a role model for a wonderful father you have been. Right? The videos are very touching. Right? The words that are coming from your sons and daughters to express their gratitude, which in other times they may be too shy to actually say anything. So a role model can be well represented by what we mean in the name of a great Bodhisattva, 大菩萨 in Buddhism. Okay, so a great Bodhisattva is one who has perhaps reached the other shore of liberation. Right? We are the ordinary Bodhisattvas. We are the naughty Bodhisattvas. We are the worried Bodhisattvas. We are the confused Bodhisattvas. But a great Bodhisattva is really the Bodhisattva we see and read about in the sutras, like Avalokiteshvara, Samantabhadra, Manjusri, right? And many others. And so by this, I set up my topic for today, right? My first meeting with many of you for this year as part of the Mabuhay monthly talk as Prajnaparamita, the Bodhisattva Mentality. I set this topic because I hope in the search of a good mindset, right, we too can find ways to liberate ourselves from troubles or worries, fears or anxiety, and most importantly, though not in the near future, but in the far, far away future, right, we can all together go beyond to the other shore of samsara and to end our birth and death. So allow me to share my screen to begin my chat with you this evening. Okay. So Prajnaparamita. Okay. Prajnaparamita as the Bodhisattva mentality. Okay. I really love the statue, which is a thinking Maitreya found in Japan, one of the national treasures. I love the fact that he, first of all, has one of his legs crossed, right, in a very elegant way, which for us ladies would have otherwise been referred to as terrible, without manner, right, and without a hope to actually marry into a good family because of our lack of gracefulness. But this Bodhisattva pulls it off so well, right, with one leg up and the thinking mudra, and that very gentle and elegant, graceful smile. You will see him sitting in such comfort, such relaxed manner, and engage in deep thinking. I remember when I went to Japan, and that in that week when they actually opened up the cupboard that actually stored this Bodhisattva, which they only did once a year, I actually sat there in this temple in Nara for 2 whole hours, just looking at this Bodhisattva, feeling a moment of peace and joy. It was not a very big statue. I think it was only about 60 centimeters in height, right? And it was about 10 meters away from me, right? Well saved and worshipped in a wooden cupboard. But even from that distance, I was really, truly enjoying and appreciating that peace and tranquility that was emitted from the face of this Bodhisattva statue. But I also wondered, what is a Bodhisattva thinking about? Have you ever wondered too? When you see somebody so peaceful and tranquil, what exactly is going on in their mind that makes them this peaceful? Right? What exactly is going on in their mind that makes them emit a quality that is so influential that we too begin to bathe in their peace and tranquility. This is probably the kind of role model I look up to, the kind of person I wish I could become, hopefully no later than age 60. The Maitreya Bodhisattva. So what is Prajnaparamita? Just a quick breakdown. Prajna, as we know, right? Sometimes it's being referred to as insight, right? Or higher knowledge, right? Pra means higher, jna means knowledge, right? So anything beyond worldly knowledge that allows you to see from the higher spot, right? You get to see everything clearly. You understand how everything is connected. You realize why everything has come together. Okay. What about the paramita? Okay. Well, the paramita is actually the past participle of parami, bolomi, right? Not the jackfruit, right? But the fruit actually inherited the name of bolomi for its shape of completeness and roundness. So parami means to complete, to perfect. And the ta as a suffix actually in one way symbolize a past participle of parami. So paramita means I have crossed over to the other shore, right? I have completed. So that's why we refer to each other at the end of an event, right? Ni bolo mi le ma? Have you paramied? Right? That means have you paramita? Right? Have you completed today's mission? Have you completed your dream? And so on. So you would imagine a bodhisattva is one who has perfected or completed the attainment of that higher knowledge, which allows us to see more and to see greater. So one of the best examples of a bodhisattva who can see from up high, see well, see very clearly is Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva from the Heart Sutra. But did you know that this 260 character Chinese sutra is actually a nutshell of something bigger called the Prajnaparamita Sutra, 大般若经, or 般若经, something we talked about all the time. So expanding the 260 word summary into a 600 huge mega scroll of elaborations on how a bodhisattva actually thinks and practices has been something which many people spend their entire life on understanding. So why do we want to understand the way a bodhisattva thinks? By the way this bodhisattva looks, right? The peace, right? The serenity, and perhaps the wisdom we have read about all the bodhisattvas in their way to deliver sentient beings. Well, perhaps the Bodhisattva mentality means we are looking at somebody who is able to pass life's tests with flying colors. We all go through tests in our lives, right? And there's always that smarter bunch who can, come through with an almost near perfect score effortlessly. And then coming back to the test of life in terms of relationships, right? Physical illness, mental ailments, and the personal relationship challenges, as well as career problems. These are all individual tests in life. And so we too also hope to pass with flying colors. And therefore, these bodhisattvas must have done something right, to be referred to as the great bodhisattvas. Therefore, the Prajnaparamita Sutra obviously serves as more or less a guideline or a manual towards how the bodhisattva gets it right. So similar to when we read the Chinese martial arts novels, 武侠小说, right? They always have the 武林秘籍, the secret scroll that is stacked in a very safe and far away place, but the whole world is fighting and killing each other to get. Okay? But for the bodhisattva's secret to passing life's tests with flying colors, you don't need to kill each other. You don't need to go violent. You don't need to have to go into the far distance places to find it, because it's right in front of us. But having said that, the Prajnaparamita Sutra consists of 600 scrolls. It's going to be a very long and tedious journey for us to understand it. But fortunately, there's a smaller version of it called the Ashta Sharika Prajnaparamita Sutra, the Xiaoping Bore Jing, right, which is much shorter, but nevertheless contains just about the same amount of information. And I'm bringing this up because it has been one of our previous or most recent intensive study courses of the sutra at Fogwangshan during COVID. As we weren't able to travel, we had the opportunity to arrange 5-day to 7-day intensive courses on sutra studies being taught by professors from different parts of the world. And being responsible for the English sutra studies group for our monastics, we had the opportunity to reach out to Professor Louis Lancaster, Professor Emeritus from UC Berkeley, who has actually translated the Ashta from Chinese into English. It's been his lifetime work, and he's a very proficient scholar who not only understands the Prajnaparamita well, he also puts it into practice so well. Okay, so in those 5 days, we truly enjoy the learning process of this very profound knowledge, because he was able to really bring it towards us in a very friendly sense, and at the same time, encourage us to understand something very difficult without giving rise to fear. Okay. So what I'm doing today is also to borrow his wisdom, and I'm going to borrow a large portion of what he taught us and to share with you tonight in understanding how a Bodhisattva actually thinks from a few quotes of the Xiaoping Bore Jing. So to give you a quick nutshell of what the Prajnaparamita Sutra is about, it deals with various numbers of topics, right? 600 scrolls, that's a lot. But the main topics include the conduct of a Bodhisattva. So that's got to concern you and I on some level, right? Although we are not a great Bodhisattva, at least as a beginning Bodhisattva or aspiring Bodhisattva, we can look up to these role models and see what else we can do, right, to purify our bodily, verbal, and mental karmas so that we come closer to tranquility. We can also help people do that. So the conduct of a Bodhisattva is one topic. And also, how does the Bodhisattva realize the perfection of wisdom? Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva has given us a glimpse into it. But further deep into the sutra, you can really see how the Buddha and his disciples discuss these topics. Very interesting dialogues. For those who have joined the Vimalakirti Sutra study program, you might hear something similar. So I hope this doesn't boggle your mind as much after your preparation in the Vimalakirti program. Okay. There's also how we realize Zhenru, right? The realization of thusness, right? Which just by the thought of this sometimes gives us a headache, right? How do you understanding something so abstract? Okay. But let's find a few ways to simplify this and take the first few steps. Okay. So how does a Bodhisattva think? Right? What is the Bodhisattva mentality? I think I only have enough time to share 2 rounds with you today. Dr. Lancaster gave us 6 rounds of ammunition on how to understand Prajnaparamita. Venerable Miao Guang was there too, right? And in Chinese, we would say, whenever you learn something and have an inspiration, 你的脑洞会大开, right? You open up so many windows in your brain. Okay, so today's 2 rounds, hopefully, will also give you a similar taste. This will be my offering to you. So the first round, let's see, how does a Bodhisattva think? Okay. I would say a Bodhisattva thinks with great vows. Okay. So what does that mean? Okay. A Bodhisattva thinks big, but starts small. Okay. Whenever we say a great vow, right, you'll probably feel daunted by the images of how a Bodhisattva has to save every single living being. Right? A Bodhisattva has to go through all kinds of suffering. So if I direct this talk in that direction, I think maybe by 8:55, half of you will be gone. Okay, so let's start with something a bit more encouraging. So I want to give you a picture of what a great vow looks like. First of all, from this story we read about in the Lotus Sutra. another fun encounter we do with the Beijing group. Okay, so this is chapter 14, the chapter on Devadatta. We see this after the round when Sakyamuni Buddha brings all the bodhisattvas and the living beings into the many jewels stupa, Dobao Fota, and actually opens up that stupa and see the Buddha, the many jewels Buddha. And having done that, there comes the wisdom accumulated bodhisattva, 智积菩萨, right? Who then has a next question to Sakyamuni Buddha after meeting his best friend. Basically, he's asking for an advice as to how do you actually teach, Buddhists at this level? How do you actually bring everybody onto the level where you are? So Sakyamuni Buddha gives wisdom accumulated a task. He says, you ask this question. Now I'm asking you to go to the Dragon Palace and find Manjusri. When you find Manjusri, you can discuss the Dharma and the teaching, and maybe Manjusri will give you some kind of tips. So wisdom accumulated goes to the Dragon Palace, Longgong. That's where Manjusri was. Okay. Well, here's the thing. When we don't see each other for a long time, right? How do we greet each other? We probably will ask each other, how are you? How was your holiday? Right? I hope you're well. But the bodhisattvas don't greet each other that way. Right? The bodhisattvas talk a little bit more different and interestingly. So as soon as Manjusri and wisdom accumulated meet each other, 自积菩萨跟文殊菩萨, this is what they say. Okay? They don't talk about trivial matters. They talk about big business. 国家大事. Okay? And so immediately the Bodhisattva says, when you went to the palace of the Dragon King, how many living beings did you convert? Okay. So I guess it's a bit like the business people when they meet each other, how much money are you making, right? Any new ventures, right? So it's a bit like that to kind of check on your life progress. But the Bodhisattva's progress is about how many beings you have converted or saved. Okay. And this is Manjusri's answer. Okay. You ask me how many beings I have saved. I tell you, the number is immeasurable. Right? If you ask me how many, I am incapable of calculating that number. Okay? The mouth cannot express it. The mind cannot fathom it. Okay? But if you want proof that I have indeed been delivering sentient beings, right, I will show you a proof. Okay? And so as soon as he said that, he allowed millions and billions of bodhisattvas to rise from the Dragon Palace from beneath the ocean. And all of these bodhisattvas in an instant fly towards the vulture peak to where the Buddha is. So this is the story in the Lotus Sutra to help us understand how big a bodhisattva's vow can be and how big a bodhisattva's endeavor and achievement can be. To help us kind of imagine it. But if you say, what do you mean by the millions and billions of bodhisattvas? Right? Can I at least meet one of them? Manjusri says, yes. Okay, let me show you my youngest protege. Okay, so he points towards the Naga girl in the Dragon Palace, 小龙女, right? 妙慧童女. You might have read about her from 妙慧童女经. Manjusri says, if you want to understand how many beings I have delivered and how much I can help any being attain Buddhahood, talk to this 8-year-old girl. And so wisdom accumulated goes on to have this very interesting dialogue with the Naga girl, the 8-year-old girl, who tells him everything about how to attain Buddhahood and how to instantly turn towards a female into a male in order to attain Buddhahood and so on. So this 8-year-old all-knowing girl who attains Buddhahood becomes that best representative of Manjusri's great endeavor. Okay, so can you imagine this? Right? In order to describe something amazing he has done, he sends his youngest student, right? Someone perhaps closest to us with the least level of accomplishments. This is probably to do two things. First of all, to get us to accept that, yes, it has been done. That's the first thing. And secondly, to break our preconceptions about Buddhahood. That is very difficult, that only extreme experts and seniors on the Bodhisattvahood can achieve it. Manjushri breaks down this preconception by sending the 8-year-old girl for us to, first of all, again, stop thinking about numbers. Right? Just like what he says, it's immeasurable. You can't calculate it, and your words can't express it. So this opens up how bodhisattvas converse with each other beyond our regular understandings, but perhaps for us to begin to open a window to how we can transcend our daily limitations that we continue to place onto ourselves. So what's a bodhisattva's great vow? Obviously, to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, isn't it? To attain Buddhahood, to attain truthfulness. Okay. But what makes the vow great is that the Bodhisattva says, once I do this, I will also help every living being do it. So the second part of the great vow is to ensure that all beings attain these two. Okay. So to achieve this, it's going to mean that all of us, all living beings, will all become part of thusness. Okay, dear Bodhisattvas, Bliya members, fathers and mothers, do you believe this? Can you accept what has been presented? Do you think it's possible for you as a Bodhisattva to achieve it? Or is this merely a myth? Just like you, when I first read about this, I begin to place the limitations and the impossible reasons on myself so that I put myself out of the picture of having to deliver the immeasurable, ignorant, stubborn, right, out of my reach living beings. Okay. But for this conversation, it's already opened up a new scope of understanding among bodhisattvas. Obviously, Manjushri is telling us one thing. It is only possible to achieve a bodhisattva's great vow when you think not in terms of numbers. That is, the moment you stop thinking, oh, if I have to deliver all these living beings, how many years would I have to spend? Right? How many asamkhya kalpas would I have to go through? Right? What is the size of the crowd that I have to deliver? What is the amount of effort that I have to put in order to achieve that great vow? Right? So the more you think about it, the more exhausted you get. And you're going to say, never mind. You know, I'm just going to go back and be my ordinary, ignorant, sentient being and leave this big task to somebody else. It's true. When you think in this matter, of course, you put yourself out of the picture. However, the message from Manjushri over here is telling us that the moment you think without this, you get a glimpse into the first step of achieving something great. Okay. So who achieved something great? Venerable Master Xing Yun started his life as a Dharma propagator after graduating from the Buddhist college at age 20. And as soon as he graduated, his first task was to assume the role of a principal of a primary school. He never went to school. He never received proper education. Then all of a sudden, he's being asked to be the principal of a school. He didn't back down. He didn't say, oh, I don't have a certificate. I'm not old enough. I'm not trained. I don't have the material. I'm not rich enough. I don't have the resources. I don't know any teachers. You might discover as human beings, we are extremely talented when it comes to listing the reasons to why we cannot. But fortunately, Venerable Master Xing Yun lacked such an ability. He assumed the role of a principal at age 20. And he went on to achieve what you see today. 60 years later, hopefully he is accomplishing the vow of letting the Buddha's light shine on the entire world and to ensure that the Dharma flows through all 5 continents. But have you wondered, was he actually intimidated by such a vow at age 20? He thought big. but he started with very small steps. He learned how to be a teacher. He learned how to serve his fellow monastics. He learned how to build temples. He learned how to edit magazines. He did all of this, but at age 20, perhaps all that there was in his mind was just one thing. I vow to repay the kindness of my master, who gave me the opportunity to be a monastic. So it was as simple as that. Perhaps the thought of building 200 temples across the world didn't really came across in his mind. But this was his great vow. He thought big, but he started small. A second person who achieved the great vow of a Bodhisattva is Venerable Miao Guang. You will have to ask her, what did she bring with her when she first landed in Cebu? Accordingly, all she had was a Buddha statue, a small luggage. She spoke maybe little language, English, and I'm sure she didn't speak any Cebuano or Tagalog. She was uncertain of her future. And when she finally moved to Manila, she began in the little center with just a handful of ladies, who were making boxes of food, for charity. And that's where she began. But you might wonder what actually came across her mind when she arrived in the Philippines. I'm sure she thought big too. Her goal was perhaps for every citizen in the Philippines, to benefit from the joy of the Dharma. We might need to interview her on this. But maybe 30 years later, we see the 11-12-story Mabuhay Temple in Manila. We see the many temples across Philippines' major cities. We see Guangming College in Manila, in Tagaytay. And then there's the 4th and 5th batch of graduates already. It all started with this little bag she carried with her. But I'm sure she thought big and started small. So saying that, what I would like to deliver is the fact that a great vow is not great because of its weight. A great vow is made great because it is a continuum. By continuum, we can think of the spiral that we discover in our DNA. It goes on and on and on and on, but it's always evolving. So for this, a great vow is made because a bodhisattva is able to persist with it without being daunted by the amount of years, time, or work that needs to be put into it. So coming back to the Xiaoping Borei Jing, the Buddha also explains to the bodhisattvas, this is how you should think about paramita. And so let's look at this part. I've extracted a small line from Dr. Lancaster's translation. It says, well, this is somebody talking to the Buddha. I'll explain who later. But the quote is, "O world-honored one, immeasurable Buddha qualities, paramita is this Prajnaparamita." So kind of giving us a first glimpse into what is the Prajnaparamita. 无量佛法般若蜜是般若波罗蜜，过算术法故。Just as one transcends the means of calculation. So in other words, there's no way to measure Prajnaparamita. That is a continuum. And a continuum is endless. So we can say Prajnaparamita is endlessness, isn't it? If it's endlessness, well, to measure something, you have to have a beginning and an ending point. But in Prajnaparamita, the mentality of a bodhisattva, there are no such points in endlessness. If something does not have a beginning or an ending, nothing can be measured or defined within this endlessness. So to go beyond means of calculation, we have to also remember we are all part of it. This endlessness is a part of our everyday experience. So what is it? in your mind, you might think, only God knows endlessness in that case, right? Only Buddha knows. I would never know. Okay. But human beings have their intelligence. They have their ways. Science doesn't like endlessness. For example, if you have done maths in algebra, there's no limit to how long I could count on, right? So give me the exact number of pi, right? You begin with 3.14, but you can go on and on and on and on and on, right? And so science needs to be able to be measured. That's how they regard an everyday experience. Yet what we're going through in Prajnaparamita cannot be measured. So the Buddha will now teach us to understand why there's really no need to measure it. Okay, to go beyond our mundane intellectuals and to go up higher to look at how the immeasurable is regarded. Okay. So Shariputra turns to the Buddha and says, well, world-honored one, Prajnaparamita is most profound, immeasurable, and unfathomable. Right? So I guess we've all established that. So immeasurable means endlessness. You have to keep going. Okay? And when Shariputra says unfathomable, it means there's no limitations. Right? You can go on in any direction for as long as you like to try to understand it. So as aspiring bodhisattvas, right, we live in this incredible situation where we are by ourselves. We come to life and then we're born into endlessness. And because of this, we try to create a whole existence trying to deny it. But the Buddha here says, no, right? It's endless, right? 1,000 verses are just part of endlessness, right? We can swim and walk and drive in endlessness, right? And we can still feel that I'm contained in the universe. Under the power of gravity, I'm living my life in total denial of endlessness. So who can believe this thing? Subhuti addressed the Buddha by saying, "O world-honored one, this suchness is most profound." Right? The Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi of the Buddha is born forth from this suchness. O world-honored one, the Tathagata, having attained this profound Dharma, is able to teach this suchness to living beings. So Prajnaparamita, perfect enlightenment, comes from exactly this. So does everything. Okay. But who can believe this? This is just too much for us, isn't it? Right? I want to draw lines and make a horizon. But the bodhisattvas are there to constantly let us know that there's endlessness. Okay. So I guess the moment or the day we attain full enlightenment will be the day when we realize what endlessness means. But nevertheless, even if you don't, there is no escaping it. Okay. So how do we actually begin? Okay. We begin by doing this. Okay. In this part of the sutra, right, bodhisattvas are reminded that they cannot be located in any time or any place, okay, because of endlessness. If we can't be located, what do you see on the slide now? Right? This whole ball of perhaps energy, a whole ball of galaxy. So where am I? Okay. Where are we? If I was to put a dot and say, this is the center, right, would you agree that the pink dot is the center of the circle? But it isn't a circle, is it? So what is it a center of? So by doing this, you might discover that every place or every form of existence is endlessly small. Even if we have a beginning and an ending dot, it does not have any meaning in endlessness. So by saying this with us, when we think of the limitations we have, the bodhisattvas have no such conception. They're not limited by anything at all. This next part of the sutra says, the measure of form is not existent. What does Miao Guang look like? Am I square? Well, only my glasses are kind of rectangular. Right? Am I round? My head is not exactly round, and this is not my head either. Right? It's made up of many things. So the measurement of form is not existent, is not apprehended. The same goes to the measure of sensation, perception, and volition and cognition. Right? The major aspects of human experience. These are not to be apprehended. In other words, the measurement of everything is non-existent in the mentality of a bodhisattva, let alone trying to apprehend it. So every time we start to say, I only want to go from A to B, in endlessness, there's no meaning. Right? The dots are just made up and have no real significance in terms of what is out there. So if we wish to follow the path of the bodhisattva who live in endlessness, right, the first thing we discover is that every part of our body is actually that. The cells, our memories, right, all the changes that are happening, right? We have to learn to live with it. This is what the conversation between Buddha and Subhuti happened in the Diamond Sutra, right? Again, in the conversation, dialogue about space. Subhuti, do you think that the space in the eastern quarter can be measured? Right? 东西南北上下十方. No word on that one. Subhuti, can space in the western, southern, and northern quarters, above and below, be measured? No word on that one. Why no? Because you can't measure it. So to give you an analogy, if I go to a drink machine and I put out my dollar, right, out comes a can of Coke. But if the machine malfunctions and just keeps pouring out cans of juice and Coke, and I will start to think, oh, right, there's a pattern. Right? Something continues to come out of it. But every time I thought there was a pattern, it changed. Right? The machine could be fixed. Right? It would run out of cans to give to me. So every time I find a pattern, the next moment it actually shatters. Therefore, not to confine ourselves to such ways of thinking, right? Even ways beyond measurement. Oh, Subhuti, what do you think? Does empty space have the qualities of being cognitive or mental states? Subhuti says, indeed, no. Right? World-honored one. And Buddha says, due to this reason, all things are inconceivable. Though the cessation of comparative measurement, they are known as inconceivable. Through the cessation of weighing, they are known as unweighable. In other words, any moment you think of weighing, right, they are looking at something that you cannot weigh. And that being said, right, coming back to endlessness, right, in the Amitabha Sutra, which we chant all the time, right, it says no pattern can be complete. No relative size can be determined. Right? So either long and short, or even one eon in this Saha world is only a day and night in Amitabha Buddha's land of ultimate bliss. Okay, so we would imagine that 100 years of the human life is only one day in Pure Land. So how do we measure time? It's not going to establish, is it? Because my definition of a year is very different from any being in Amitabha Buddha's land's definition of a year. So for that, our perception of space and time is endless. So today I present this to help us begin by understanding the Bodhisattva's mentality of where we put ourselves in terms of space and time as it comes to our goal to actually achieve something great. So we end up with that great vow, which is infinite, endless, and limitless. I would trust that up to this point, many of us are still confused. Right? How do I understand the limitless or immeasurableness of our vows, especially to an audience when we have to explain what it means? How do we make this limitlessness or infiniteness or endlessness relatable to an audience that lives an everyday life? So imagine this. Imagine where in the world can you have enough space for this audience? When Manjushri made the millions and billions of bodhisattvas appear from the dragon palace. Is the dragon palace big enough to accommodate all of these bodhisattvas? Even more, when they fly over to Vulture's Peak, do you have any idea how big the Vulture Peak is? If you have been to India and actually visited the Vulture Peak, it's a platform that only seats up to maybe 12 people, isn't it? It's very small. So if you try to fit all these billions of bodhisattvas on the Vulture Peak, it's not going to be possible, is it? Well, it's not possible when you're still thinking in terms of space. But what if you transform your mind and think of the fact that the Buddha's Vulture Peak is the peak of wisdom and attainment within the heart of the Buddha that can contain endless numbers of beings? So if I say that at this point, do you agree that the millions and billions of bodhisattvas can actually fit on Vulture Peak? If you can, this is where your mentality begins to turn towards the thusness or endlessness of the Prajnaparamita. So what it's actually trying to tell us is not the size of the audience, not the size of the crowd you need to take care. We need to get rid of the boundaries and the measurements that we live in and try to live in a state that is boundless. If your heart is big enough, if your mind is big enough, then there will be plenty of space for the millions, trillions of people. So at this point, may I invite all of you to please close your eyes and imagine that you're in another realm. You're in a realm that is not bound by the physicality of restriction. If you can imagine that, if you can house the millions of trillions of bodhisattvas, then you can start to see the message of the Buddha in this particular part of the sutra. This is only a way of saying that this is how we can live in endlessness. So how do we achieve the great vows of a bodhisattva? A bodhisattva thinks in great vows, but they make big vows, yet they take small steps. So I would say, don't be daunted by your task of attaining Bodhi wisdom. Don't be daunted when people call you a bodhisattva. Right? We're not trying to stress you out or trying to scare you away. Right? We're trying to invite you into that realm of the Buddha, just like that Vulture Peak that can accommodate infinite numbers of beings. So one thing at a time. Do what you can. Just as long as you stay in touch with your vow, right? However little things you do, you are still on your way to achieving the great vows of the Prajnaparamita. Just like the mentality of a father, right? For all the fathers online, if you look back to the first day when you found out that you were going to be a father, did you have a plan on this is what I'm going to be when I become a father? I'm sure you didn't write down the conditions, right? I have to be open, I have to be strong, I have to be wise, I have to be ready, right? If you write everything down like this, you're going to be so scared. But perhaps at that moment, what you connected to was your infinite ability to be an amazing father who is ready to show however much you love you can show to your daughter, isn't it? So beginning with that moment of vow, that's where you make yourself great. And when you can connect with the greatness, that's when you connect with the infinity or the endlessness of the Maha Prajnaparamita. So that is what I have to share for today. I hope I've only opened a small window. And sorry, I cannot go to the second round of ammunition in terms of how we break down our preconceptions. But I'm sure today already has enough for us to think about. Okay, so bodhisattvas, keep aspiring. Don't be scared. We're here for each other, one thing at a time. And we are all working towards that great attainment of enlightenment for everybody else, and including ourselves. So 加油, add oil, all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang. So now, everyone, now we have come to the exciting part of this class. Our question and answer portion is open. You may press the raise hand button below so we could be able to spotlight you. So if anyone has a question, you may just press the button below.